Hello and welcome to Money Markets and More with me, Dominic Frisby. Today we are talking about oil, and I'm walking up the street in the lovely French village of Ainois, deep in the Basque Country, and what a lovely place it is. So never mind the dodgy mortgages, oil spiking to $150 a barrel in July 2008, just before the panic set in, was as big a cause of the global financial crisis as anything. The price rise was like a sudden, unexpected tax, a liquidity drain on the economy. And the US economy is built on oil. Costs suddenly rose across every supply chain. Disposable income was sucked out of households. Corporate margins got squeezed. Inflation expectations rose. And that effectively tightened financial conditions, just as the system needed liquidity. Funding costs then rose and collateral quickly deteriorated. In a system already stretched with cheap credit, thin margins, highly leveraged institutions and ordinary borrowers were simultaneously pushed over the edge. And the structure was fragile. It only worked in a low-energy, low-rate world. Subprime may have been the trigger, but the energy shock had already destabilized the foundations. So the oil price tightened financial conditions before central banks did. And this isn't a one-off. As analyst Charlie Morris points out, there have been three major oil shocks: 1973-74, 1980, and 2008. And in 1973, the US was dependent on Arab nations for most of its oil. And shortly after the Egypt-Syria alliance suddenly declared war on Israel, oil-producing Arab nations imposed an embargo on any nation that supported Israel. You can support Israel or have cheap oil, but you can't have both, the Saudi Arabian king had said on US TV. And the oil price went from $3.50 to $10. It eventually peaked at $40 in 1980. Now, I was only a little boy in the 1970s, but we lived in South Kensington, and I remember how many Arabs just suddenly moved to the area, many of them with a great deal of money. My stepfather ran a business in Belgravia selling modern Italian furniture, and his clientele changed almost overnight. Hundreds of billions of dollars, previously in Western bank accounts, now made their way to the Gulf in a transfer of wealth like no other. And then came the Rolls Royces, the racehorses, the Harrods shopping sprees. Indeed, Harrods itself, the mansions, the public school educations, the city petrodollar recycling trade. And yes, the overpriced glitzy Valentino furniture. London would never be the same. And what impact did those years, the 1970s, have on bond and equity markets more generally? The 70s were horrible, unless you were long commodities. And the low reached in 1982 in the equities markets was so extreme that it marked one of the greatest long-term buying opportunities ever known, perhaps the greatest. 2008 had its own consequences, not least the end of the city as a leading player in the global financial system, thanks to all the regulation which followed by the general decline of London, which we all know about. Now, each of these episodes follows a similar pattern. Energy shock tightens conditions, exposes leverage, and forces a reset. Now, it might not feel that way today with oil at $100, but we are still a long way from the extremes of 1974, 1980, or 2008. A lot of commentary is saying that the investment world is too complacent and hasn't factored in what is coming. But what is 2008's $150 oil in today's money? I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to give you the CPI equivalent because CPI is a bogus measure. But using money supply instead, the equivalents look like this. $10 oil in 1974 is equivalent to maybe $150 oil today. $40 oil in 1980 is equivalent to about $360 to $440 oil today. $150 oil in 2008 is equivalent to $375 to $450 oil today. In the context of those extremes, $100 oil doesn't look unreasonable. And the sub-$60 prices with which we began this year now look extraordinarily cheap. I don't think we're going back to them anytime soon. I'm also not saying we're going to those numbers I've just described, $400 oil. I'm just showing them for context. In terms of where we're going, Charlie has it right, I think, when he says we should assume that $100 oil implies a slowdown, $150 oil a recession, and $200 oil a depression. $200 oil is not impossible if this war carries on. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe to my Substack, The Flying Frisbee. You can find that at theflyingfrisbee.com. You'll get all these articles as soon as I write them. Please like, please share, please subscribe to the channel, all that stuff, and I'll be back with another video very soon. If you're looking for a link to my Substack, it is in the description. But until next time, goodbye, and thank you for watching.